Okay. So we go from that Disney. Okay, we're going to go into something else about Disney, but I think everybody's more likely to know about them. Superheroes. So superheroes have been around since the age of time. Okay, I mean, we can date these all the way back to, the earliest things of Superman to the 1966 Batman to, I mean, whoever your favorite superhero is, whether it's Black Panther or Iron Man or Captain America or Thor or Batman or whoever it is, superheroes have been around for a long, long time. And so it always fascinates me to when I read this stuff and how much people like this compared to other things. Okay, so this actually, once again, comes from the rap. Okay, and this talks about the superhero movie isn't dying, but something needs to change. It's been a decade and a half since the first Iron Man kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2008, and 4 years since Avengers Endgame smashed box office records. But the pandemic disrupted moviegoer habits, and new heroes, Eternals, and villains such as Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania don't seem to have excited fans. The DC Extended Universe hasn't fared much better either, with Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods. Are we living in an age of superhero fatigue? The numbers tell a little more nuanced story. Yes, we are watching a box office decline, but superhero movies remain highly in demand, according to Parity Analytics data, which takes into account customer research, streaming downloads, and social media, among other engagement. The top 10 most in-demand superhero movies had a demand of 30. So here is going to be the chart I'm referring to. So this is the chart I'm referring to. Okay. So the 10 most in demand superheroes have had a demand of 34 times than the average of the first quarter, a level reached less than 1% of the movies tracked by Parrot Analytics. And Guardians of the Galaxy just opened with a domestic box office of 114 million. So actually, when you look at this, it's a little fascinating because so you have Black Panther Wakanda Forever, okay? You have Ant-Man and the Wasp. Okay, now Black Panther Ant-Man and the Wasp was their most recent entry, the MCU's most recent entry, and Black Panther came out in November. So those are obviously going to be the highest in general. Okay. Um, that being said, okay, you also have movies like The Batman, which was released a couple years ago, Spider-Man: No Way Home, which everybody knows made over $1 billion. It was a huge blockbuster for them. Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that's always fascinating because it's not the Justice League that everybody remembers. It's the Snyder one. Now, I watched that, okay? And, it had a couple of extra hours of footage. It was okay. It didn't blow my mind like everybody, oh my God, you got to see this. I mean, and that's cool. I mean, I'm glad that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't earth shattering for me. Then you had Thor: Love and Thunder, okay, which Mark, MCU property, whatever else. Joker, which is interesting because once again, that's a DC elsewhere type of property, and the fact is that that is still one of the. I mean, we've always talked about who's the greatest Joker, who's the greatest Batman, but that is a completely different Joker. And the fact that it's still getting the plays, okay, is fascinating. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This here, I think, and this came out a couple years ago, in the first week of May, right? A couple weeks ago, 2021. And the thing is that I think we were all taken by the name. Okay, they're going to go into the multiverse. But anybody has seen the picture, I mean, look, there were those out there that love it. When I saw it, I was like, Now, granted, I haven't seen it since, so I should probably go back and watch it again. I love Sam Raimi. He's done amazing work. One of the greatest scenes in that movie, creativity-wise, was the card scene and the musical note scene. It was just unbelievable. I loved it. That just shows you the creativity of him. Eternals, okay. I saw Eternals. I didn't care for it. I thought it was just too CGI based and everything else. It had a decent cast. I'm not saying that. You had big names like Angelina Jolie and others. Just didn't work for me. And of course, Black Panther. I mean, that is a staple. That is an absolute staple when it comes to MCU. I challenge anybody. I mean, it is always in the top 5 to 7 films. I mean, it's the first film to get nominated for Best Picture from Marvel. That tells you something. It won multiple Academy Awards. Even if it was under the line, that tells you something. So it's interesting how one is at the very top, but of course, I think that's more because of the recency effect, and one is at the bottom. So let's continue here. So it says, however, it's clear that movie events and specific characters can make a difference. In their first 45 days, Avengers Infinity War and Spider-Man No Way Home had the highest demand among superhero films, which means that the audience was all about the reunion of the beloved characters. So this is the next graphic down here, the scatter plot, okay? And it's a little difficult to see, but I will break it down for you. So you have, okay, in the blue, okay, let me make sure I get this correct. In the blue is DC. In the red, you have Marvel. So what you're seeing here, okay, so what's exceptional, okay, now when they're talking about this, you got to remember, over here, this is exceptional. So it goes left to right, just like anything else. So you have films, okay, like Spider-Man No Way Home, like Avengers Endgame, like Infinity War, and Far From Home. Okay. Now, let me put this in perspective. Okay. Multiverse of Madness, okay, had Spider-Man in it. Okay. And so what ended up happening was, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. It didn't have Spider-Man in it. Let me rephrase that. Okay. Let's start with Infinity War, because I think that is the big one that everybody, once again, that's a top 5 to 7 MCU film. Okay. The thing is, A, it incorporated all of your favorite characters. Okay. B, you had Doctor Strange in there. Okay. It was a continuation. And, C, for Endgame, look, it was a combination of almost 15 years of pictures. And I think that's difficult to duplicate. So you're always going to have that. And Far From Home, don't forget, when Homecoming came out and that was a success, which made over $1 billion, not that that's the end all be all, you knew that the next picture, Far From Home, was going to do well. So that's where it's exceptional. Now, the outstanding portions, okay? Now, we've got a lot of the outstanding. You've got Shazam, you've got Black Adam, you've got Joker, you've got Guardians of the Galaxy, you've got the Avengers, you have all of those films. Okay. That's where 85 to 90% of your pictures are. Okay. Now, don't forget, this is from Q1 of 2018 to Q1 of 20. So this is 5 years of pictures. You're talking about 20 to 30 pictures for both. And then, of course, you had the good, which was, and really average was Shazam, Fury of the Gods, which just got released. Black Adam, which really barely made it there, and Ant-Man, and I believe that's the last Ant-Man. So, I mean, it's interesting now that those pictures, the last 3 or 4 pictures of superhero films, actually are just starting to do it. So let me finish the article real quick. And so it says, if we analyze the two studios' portfolios over the last 5 years, Marvel is in the lead. So this is the last This is the last thing, and there's some interesting data about this. Okay. Avengers Endgame had the highest demand during a time by a wide margin. The titles with the lowest demand in the period were the latest releases from both franchises, including a fresh approach. After a decade of blockbusters, the superhero movie is entering a new era of challenges. Although there is still strong global demand for the genre, new releases will bring something different to Battlefield and will have to bring something in order for them to succeed. With a new phase of universes on the horizon for both, the next movies will be a crucial turning point for both. Okay, let's talk about this because this is extremely important. Okay. Here's the thing. Now, the top 3 by global demand right after the post premiere. Okay. Of course, you're going to have Avengers Infinity War. And the reason I say that is because at the end of the day, once again, all your characters come together. Okay. It was emotional. I mean, I can't believe it's been 5 years, and I went back and I did a whole retrospective of that. You guys can check out. That being said, we saw Thanos. Okay. This was the first film that we got Thanos in. Okay. And that is because we had waited how long? Almost 7, 8 years to see him. Okay. And we waited 10 years from Iron Man in 2008 to Infinity War in 2018. So, of course, it's going to, and of course, it did record numbers and everything else. So, of course, that's going to be 425,000, okay, among demand. And this is right after everybody wants to know when is it going to come to DVD? When is it going to come to Blu-ray? When is it going to go on Disney Plus? Because if they didn't get to see it in theaters, which I don't know how you couldn't, it's one of those things. And you got to remember something else. This is before the pandemic. Okay. It's only been the last 3 years since we have had films like No Time to Die, like I don't know, Tenet, like anything, all of the films released during, Fast 9, all these films released during the pandemic. And that's when the window closed. So in 2019, okay, you still had a 90-day window for theatrical releases. Okay? You got to keep that in mind too. So 45 days, of course the demand is going to be there. Okay? So let's take a look at the second one. Okay? Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this was, released in one of the films that saved the, cinemas and everything else. Made over $1 billion and everything else. So you have to understand something too. That you have to understand something too. That the reason why this worked, the reason why this played so well is a number of things. And by the way, there were leaks for this. There were set photos out there that Andrew and Toby were going to come back and everything else. But the reason why this worked was, number one, you had all of these other Spider, of all these generations coming back. Okay. Number two was the story. That was the main reason. We were finally coming to the journey's end for Peter Parker, up to Tom Holland Peter Parker. And the other two came in, and you had everybody come in, and it was nostalgic. Okay. Doc Ock and Green Goblin and, Jamie Foxx's Electro, and you had all of these different combinations. So you got everybody in there, right? And you're starting to see this more and more in film. Okay, I mean, look at Jurassic World Dominion. They bring back Sam Neill, they bring back Laura Dern, they bring back Jeff Goldblum. Okay, look at Top Gun Maverick. Okay, I mean, that first trailer. Okay, I mean, the film was amazing. I've seen it 3 times, but look at the first trailer. It had everything you wanted. It was all nostalgic, right? It had, Maverick racing down the runway. It had the volleyball scene or the football scene. It had the great balls. It had all the nostalgic things. So that was another main reason why it worked. Okay. So there in itself. So No Way Home was going to be huge. Far From Home. Let's talk about Far From Home for a minute. Now, once again, like I said, sequels are always difficult to make. But once the first one makes $1 billion, okay, then at that point, you're almost guaranteed to make $1 billion in the third film. Okay, not always, but almost guaranteed. And that being said, it has to be the right story and everything else, and they did it. And those are your top three Marvel demand atmosphere. Like I said, Infinity War, so Spider-Man: No Way Home, and Far From Home. And it's interesting because I did a piece a couple of months ago. Spider-Man has now become one of the most popular superheroes, more than Iron Man, more than Captain America, more than Thor, more than Black Panther. So it's interesting to see. Now, let's take a look at the DC ones. Okay, so you have Joker, the Batman, and Aquaman. So Joker, okay, this was a completely different take on the character. Okay, Joaquin Phoenix, of course, ended up winning the Academy Award. Tom Phillips and company that ended up getting 10 plus Academy Award nominations. Um, the film was really good. It was really, really solid. And it touched upon a couple of different themes about it. Okay. Number one was mental illness. Okay. Number two is, an outside theme of it. I'm not saying it's the total theme, but following your dreams. Okay. And number three, it was a different take on the character. I mean, we had seen the Jack Nicholson one, we had seen the Heath Ledger one, we had seen, even going back to the television version, the Cesar Romano one. This was a completely different take, and that was so key. Okay, just like the next film we'll talk about in a minute, it was such an important thing, and that's why it was successful because people didn't want to see the same old thing. Now, if you're going to rank them, and everybody has different rankings, okay, I think everybody is going to say, for the most part, that Heath Ledger, his role, his portrayal as the Joker, will just top everybody else's, hands down, twice on Sunday. Okay, because it was the most grounded, it was the most graphic, it was the most just vile, maniacal take of it. Okay, so let's move to the counterpart of that. Okay, let's move to the Batman. So that is the second, okay, most in demand after the film. So that made $770 million. And guys, I want to be clear about this. This isn't all about the money. Okay. I'm just making points about this. So you have to understand that this particular film was so big for a number of reasons. Number one, okay, it's, any major comic book fan, okay, will tell you that this is the trinity of DC. Okay, you have Wonder Woman, you have Batman, you have Superman. Those are the three major superheroes. Okay, for DC. So that's it. Popularity wise, is number one. Made $170 million opening weekend. Did 770. So number two, this was a different take on Batman. This wasn't George Clooney. This wasn't, Val Kilmer. This wasn't Michael Keaton. This wasn't, anybody else. This was a darker, this was a muted Batman. And here's the other key thing. We were just starting to figure out Batman. Even the first 5 minutes of that film is magnificent with the Nirvana song, okay? And the voiceover, and even he's writing in a diary, and that closes and it says year two. So we're getting a year two Batman. He's still trying to figure out how to be Batman. Okay, he's still trying to figure all this stuff out. This is a completely different take than anything we'd ever seen before. Okay? So that's the second reason. Number 3, Matt Reeves in his brilliance, what he did was he used little nuggets. Talk about nostalgia, okay? Going back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, talking about nostalgia, okay? Here's the thing. He was brilliant in what he did. He took little nuggets from everything and put them in to the film. For example, okay, anybody who has seen the film by now, okay, when he pulls up to the funeral, okay, what is the? And I immediately caught on to this when I saw it. What does it look like? The 1966 Batmobile. Okay, that's the first thing. Number 2, when we talk about nostalgia, when Alfred is going through the letters in the mail, okay, what do we see over in the corner? We see the statue's head, right? Anybody who's a fan of the 1966 show knows that's what they used to go into the Batcave. Okay? You had other little nuggets and Easter eggs spread across the film. So not only are you getting a brand new take on this character, Batman, who's a younger, okay, more visceral Batman, but you get all those added nuggets. And lastly, the last reason why is because when we're introduced to him in the first 10 minutes of the movie, we know that he is a much, much different man because of that subway scene, right? He walks in, the guys, the punks are there. Well, who is this guy? And you just hear the music, you just see the rain coming down, the feet, okay? And he walks up and he kicks the crap out of the guy. He kicks the crap out of the guy. And then proceeds in magnificently shot, okay? And you see the black and the lighting around and the silhouette, and he's just knocking the ever living daylights out of like 5 and 6 guys, okay? And it's that primitive moment, okay, where he's like, who are you? And of course, Michael Keaton, and he's like, I'm vengeance, and he's just like, oh shit. So it's a totally different take. That's why the Batman is number 2 here, and that's why it remains one of the best Batman. Robert Pattinson himself is not probably the best Batman, right? By himself. But because look, you had Michael Keaton, you had all these others, but when you put him in that manner, that's the big thing. Okay. And forget about all that. Then you had, excuse me, then you had, not only like the Batmobile chase, and it was just a magnificent movie. And it's fascinating. When that came out, okay, I said that it could have earned 5 Academy Awards, the nominations. Number 1 was Best Picture. I really, truly believe it could have gotten Best Picture nomination. True. Obviously didn't. Number 2, I thought Paul Dano should have gotten an Academy Award nomination for the Joker, or for the Riddler. Hands down. Hands down. Number 3, I couldn't believe Michael Giordano did not get a Best Score. He didn't even make the shortlist for Best Score. That was criminal in my eyes. Okay. Number 4 was the costume. I thought the costume was fantastic. Okay. And number 5, the sound or the editing. I mean, really editing because of that whole car chase. Those are the 5 and it didn't get 1. I was blown away by it. So that is why the Batman is the number 2 film. Okay. And the last one here we have is Aquaman. So Aquaman, the reason why this is in such demand, and this is a different character. So yeah, let's talk about Aquaman for a minute. Number 1, this is part of the whole Zack Snyder universe. Okay, so that's why this is a big deal. Okay. Truth be told, I've not seen Aquaman. So I have not seen the movie, but everybody that has said it's a fabulous movie. Number 2, speaking of Jason Momoa, he does the film very, very well. This is a standalone film, don't forget. So standalone films when you have a group film like the Avengers or whatever, and then you do solo projects, they're going to want to see their favorite character all by themselves. And so that's why. Am I a Zack Snyder? No, I am. I am a Zack Snyder fan. I do. The Justice League movie was okay. Okay. I liked Man of Steel. Man of Steel was a very solid entry into the Superman um, zeitgeist of films. Um, I love 300. The graphic, way he did that was fabulous. I saw Watchmen a while ago, so I'd have to watch it again. But I am a Zack Snyder fan, and it's not that I'm not one of those say, "Oh, I hate Zack Snyder" or whatever. No, I enjoy his work. I think he's a great filmmaker. I'm excited for Rebel Moon, yeah. And the thing is that it's one of those things that because Zack doesn't talk a lot, because Zack doesn't do a lot of press. I mean, he does some, but and the other thing about you got to understand something too, okay? He owns Rebel Moon, okay? He owns Rebel Moon. He didn't own all those characters from the Justice League. I mean, yeah, he went back and he did all the alterations to it to make it what he wanted, his vision, but he owns all and everything of Rebel Moon. And I think that and that's a big, big thing. And Netflix is letting him do whatever he wants because he knows he's going to be a draw for him. So, but getting back to Aquaman real quick. So when you have solo projects, you see everybody, and then you have a solo project. If it's your favorite character, you're going to watch it more and more. Excuse me. So, and of course, it's one of the few films, when we talk about DC films in general, okay, we talk about Aquaman, we talk about, all these other movies. This is one of the few films, Wonder Woman. We see this is one of the few films that does very, very well. And hence it's up there as the number 3, okay, most watched video on demand after. So I'm breaking all this down for you guys for a couple of reasons. The reason I say this, okay, is because the article talked about, are we having superhero fatigue? And the answer is no. And the reason being is this. When you look back at Marvel, okay, and you say, well, they haven't put out anything good recently. Now, I'm going to talk about Guardians in a minute. You take a look at their last 4 films, okay? I'm not talking monetarily either. Let me make that clear. I'm talking about just in general. You've got Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, that was an impossible situation. Truth be told, that was an impossible situation. Okay. So you had Black Panther Wakanda Forever. You had Thor Love and Thunder, which for me didn't work. The story didn't work at all. Not only didn't work, it was lazy writing. It was cheap. Yeah, there were a couple of gags in there that worked, but the story itself. And by the way, I know Mighty Thor is a huge part of the Marvel thing, but the way it was done was lazy. It was truthfully, I don't know why she needed to do that, or they needed to do that for her. It was almost like Rachel McAdams in Multiverse of Madness. Why did she come back? It didn't make any sense. Okay, so that's the second one. Okay, then you take a look at Multiverse of Madness. Now, that had a huge opening. Okay, $187 million, went on to almost make $1 billion after the fact. It didn't work for me at all. I think Chadwick's passing through it. Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, it did. Nobody saw that coming. But what I will say is this, though. there were only very few people that knew he was sick. Okay. There were only a very few people, and Kevin was one of them, because he knew, okay, not only did his immediate family know, but Kevin Feige knew. Because my guess is, and I don't know this to be true or false, I have no inside information on this, but my guess is that he wanted him to really be a part, even though that was more of a time travel movie. Endgame, I'm talking about, that he wanted to be really a part of it. So when he was going through his chemo and everything else, that's why he said, okay, we're only going to give you a couple of scenes here. So, and then of course, um, what happened was truly unfortunate, and we all miss him dearly. So I totally agree with you. It really did, because if he's in Wakanda Forever, it's a completely different movie. It's a completely different movie, and I don't know if we'll ever find out if there was a version with him in it, if he hadn't gotten sick. But back to the point, though. So that is the third film. Okay, Multiverse of while it did well, it started. Okay, most of that movie was made overseas. Yes, it finished with almost $1 billion, but it did have its problems. Okay, for example, I mean, just the whole, America character. Just how she was introduced. I didn't care for it. Why was Rachel McAdams in the picture? It did. I mean, and the final film is Ant-Man and the Wasp. And the Ant-Man and the Wasp, we finally see the big bad. They were trying a different approach in Kang. Okay. Now, I had not watched season 1 of Loki, but I knew of him. And so the big thing was this. Why are you having this major big bad who was supposed to be the big bad, of this whole phase be in an Ant-Man movie? Didn't make sense. Because Ant-Man, who I would claim is a secondary character. Okay? He's not a Thor, he's not a Captain America, he's not an Iron Man. Okay? And you're putting this guy, this big bad, in this guy going up against this little character, figuratively and literally, okay, in this little movie. It didn't make sense. And then the ending, and I'm not going to spoil it, so anybody who has seen it knows what I'm talking about, but the ending just didn't work. And that was a major problem for me. So all of that being said, when Guardians comes out, they're like, okay, Marvel really needs a win. And Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014 was written, directed by James Gunn, was a fabulous movie. I think elevated them from a C-level character to an A-level character because it had emotion, because it had the team element, because it, was all of those other things. It was written beautifully. Volume 2 was good. It wasn't great. Okay, it was still good. It had the gags, everything else. But Volume 3 just was a completely different animal, literally and figuratively. It touched on so many different emotions. Okay? Did it have its problems? Yeah, it had its problems, but it was still impactful. And when you see a movie make, as much as it did opening weekend, okay, and then have the staying power the second weekend, $60 million, and it only dropped 50%. That's huge. Huge. And then it makes 32 to 33 million last weekend. Wow. This is what Marvel needs. Okay? This is what they should be getting back to. And they're not going to. I mean, this was the final thing, and they have a lot of questions moving forward. They really, really do. Because they have a lot of different properties out there with a lot of different sequels teased and nothing going toward the big bad. So that's the whole long and short of the article. I went into a very winded analytical thing for every single phase of it because it's necessary. Um, Anyways, what do you guys think of the article and the numbers? Okay. Do you think that those hold true? Or have you watched any one of those 6 films on their respective streaming services multiple times? I know I have. I've seen Infinity War 3 times on Disney Plus. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll get back to everybody.